Namaste. Heat, analysis of core psychoanalytic mechanisms, open split. Psychoanalysis explains causality of pathology with some core psychoanalytic phenomena, be it in the Oedipus or the open split. Psychoanalysis, however, doesn't reconstruct these phenomena and further. What would happen if we were to deconstruct? Our guide, Himanshu Vaidyaji, will take us on the journey of elemental deconstruction. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So traditionally, how would we identify the split and go further to heal it?
Let us take a specific example. Say a person comes to you with complaints of delusion of persecution, and you are a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. How would you go about it? So you have his case history and you have his complaint. So the first thing you would try to find out as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist is what can be the cause of his complaint. His complaint is of delusion of persecution. And from your psychoanalytic knowledge, you know that Freud has offered one explanation of how delusion of persecution can be caused. And Freud's explanation is based upon repressed homosexuality. Similarly, Klein has offered another causality for the same problem, delusion of persecution, and her premise is that it is because of an open split. The person could not successfully move in the childhood from a paranoid schizoid position to a depressive position, and because the split is open, the delusion of persecution is happening. Now, as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, if you are well read, you also know that Winnicott would offer a very different explanation. He would say good enough mothering has not happened, and therefore this difficulty. Kohut would offer another explanation, and he would say a healthy self has not been formed, and therefore the self is disintegrating and defenses are malfunctioning. And ISTDP would offer another explanation to say that there is repressed anger which is projected out, and that projected anger is then assumed or believed to be coming back at him. So all these explanations are possible. Now, what is common in this? All of them, that one core unconscious process is believed to be the cause of this difficulty. Now, let us say, as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, the patient has come to you, he has put forward this complaint, you have taken the case history, you have all this knowledge of psychoanalysis, and based upon the case history, you feel that client's explanation fits the best. So then you would say that it seems from the case history that of all possible explanations, the Kleinian explanation fits the best. And then you take a few sessions and it confirms that indeed you were true. So then the question will be, how will you heal the split? Now, there are many ways of doing it. One intervention is the person says X about a person A. The patient says X about a person A, and X is an extreme opinion that A is very good. He is like an angel. And after a few sessions, the person says A is actually a devil. He goes to the other extreme, and at that point you can make an intervention. A few days back, you had said that A is an angel, and today you say A is a devil. If you put the two together, what comes out of it? How do you think the two can be reconciled? Either of the two is correct, or maybe part of them, both of them is correct. So if you put the both of them together, what comes to you? So he will be forced to acknowledge that he is expressing two extreme opinions about the same person, because the split is open. Of course, he would not know the word split, but he would know extreme thinking is at work. And none of the extreme ideas are true. Actually, the person is a combination of the two. So you lead him, first you point out the extreme thinking, and then you ask him, okay, is either of the extremes true? The person says no. And then you say, so then if both are partly true, if you put both of them together, how does the person A look? So you are taking him from a paranoid schizoid position to a depressive position. Or if you see that the split is in operation related to the parents, you can just give him an exercise that if you go back on a piece of paper, draw a line in the middle. On the left-hand side, write down all the good parts of your father. On the other side, write down all the difficult parts of the father. At the bottom of the page, put both of them together and have a realistic assessment of the father. So you're asking him to move from extreme bipolar thinking. Let me not use the word bipolar, but extreme thinking on the ends of the
Black and white.
pendulum. Yeah, extreme thinking to an integrated realistic thinking. So in the extreme thinking, two things happen. One, you go on the extreme, and two, lot of fantasy is interwoven in that thinking. From there, the extreme fantasy-led thinking, we want the person to move to what I say, integrated realistic thinking, which is the depressive position. So this is the way.
So the ambivalence gets into an optimum zone of a realistic experience.
Yeah. From the split, we are taking him to an ambivalence, and from ambivalence, we are taking him to a integrated assessment, integrated view of the person. So it is the split, the ambivalence, and the integrated thinking about whatever it is. So this is the way. There can be many other ways of healing the split, but these are some of the interventions to heal the split in classical way of looking doing psychoanalytic psychotherapy.
So what is the philosophical criticism of this standard approach of psychoanalysis?
Philosophically, there are many criticisms. It's a long list because psychoanalysis is a continent populated very thickly with ideas. It's a very thickly populated continent if it comes to ideas in psychoanalysis. So every idea can be criticized. So there can be a list of criticisms. But what I will take up are two cardinal criticisms. And the two cardinal criticisms pertain to two things, the width and the depth. Width meaning that psychoanalysis by and large has grown up looking at the person and his parents. Now, we are not looking at the society in which parents live, what Lacan would call the big other. We are not looking at the social situation. We are not looking at cultural situation, which is there for centuries in that area. We are not looking at the historical, political situation. And obviously, every man is a product of all of this. And therefore, the parents as they are also products of all of this. And therefore, the width problem is that psychoanalysis draws a systems framework line in which you have only the child and the parents, and you draw a line around them and say, this is all that we will analyze. So we don't look at society. We don't look at centuries old tradition and culture. We don't look at the historical, political events of those times. And therefore, then we don't look at, so if we start from the individual, the child, so if you go on widening the width, how does it happen? You have the child, the parents, the society where they live, the school where the child goes, the city where he lives, the society, the culture, the history, the culture. And then you have the global movements, the human evolution. and then you have the planetary evolution, and then you have the course of the universe. So if you look at the complete width, you start from the Big Bang or maybe before Big Bang, and you end, right, at the end of the universe. So from the beginning of the universe to the end of the universe, this is the full width, conceptual width that you can look at. And in this, if you start narrowing down the framework, the narrowest framework will be the child and the parents. So this is the problem of the width, that we talk about bio-psycho-socio model, but actually we do only the child and the parents.
So it becomes a smaller unit than the bigger segment.
So the framework of analysis is narrow. So the width criticism of psychoanalysis is this, that the complete width, if conceptually you think of anything, is from the beginning of the universe to the end of the universe, and in between your framework is located somewhere with a limited width. And this limited width in psychoanalysis is too narrow. So that is the first criticism. The second criticism is of depth, that when you say the delusion of persecution is because of the split open, right, you don't go deeper than that. You don't ask the question that why the split was open, and if two children have the same experience, why is it that in one case the split is closed and the other case the split is open? What is below the split? Is the split a fundamental fact of nature which cannot be reduced to anything other than itself, or can it be reduced to something more? Meaning, let us say you want to study a material. So say you want to study the material salt, common salt. You can put it in your hand and see, and you can study the physical properties at a macro level. Okay, what is the touch like? What is the fragrance like? What is the taste like? If you put it in water, what happens? If you put it in tea, what happens? You can do all kinds of experiments. This is knowing at a macro level. Then you want to go deeper, so you can know the same thing at the molecular level. And then you can go deeper and you can know the same thing in atomic level. You can go deeper further and you can go at subatomic level. And you can go deeper still, and then you can talk about strings, the fundamental blocks, if somebody believes, or maybe whatever are the fundamental blocks. Meaning, at the end, you will come to something which cannot be divided any further. The elemental. Now, what it is, we don't know, but conceptually, we can think about it. Now, these elementals, which cannot be divided any further, and they are elemental facts of nature which cannot be divided any further, they philosophically are called as simple objects or the simples. And the idea is everything else is made up of combination of these simple objects. It's like the color wheel, that you have three primary colors and then all other colors are combinations. Similarly, you may have a few elementals, maybe 4 or 5, or maybe there's only one elemental or whatever it is, but a set of elementals, and then everything else is a combination of them. And those fundamental elementals in philosophy are called the simple objects or the simples. Now, the depth criticism of psychoanalysis is this, that we stop at the core process. So client says the open split is the cause, we stop there, we don't go deeper. So it's like saying, to take an analogy from physics, we stop at the molecular level. We don't go at the atomic level or the subatomic level. We don't go into...
But don't you feel beyond has gone beyond that in a certain way?
Yeah, he tried...
Where the
yeah.
Has into the and formulations. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not clear about it.
No, beyond did try. Now, the only person that in psychoanalysis who has tried to go deeper in more elemental terms was Beyond. And what he did was to get into more of elemental analysis of things. But The early beyond was more into it, but the later beyond went into something different. So there is a movement into two things. One, bringing in epistemology to some extent to psychoanalysis, and going elemental more than stopping at the core process. These two things you find in early beyond. Late beyond again is different. But in general, in psychoanalysis, we don't go deeper in than the core process. Most of us stop at the core process. We don't deconstruct into elementals the core process further. So the criticism of depth is this, that you can have simple objects of two kinds. One way to think is that psychology emerges out of biology, emerges out of physics, and therefore there is one line, and in physics at the root there are some simple objects, and from those simple objects everything else emerges, in which case the same simple objects will be the simple objects for physical world, biological world, and psychological world. The second way of thinking is that maybe these three layers are interacting but they are different, and therefore each layer has its own simple objects. And these simple objects, of course, can be interrelated, interacting with simple objects of the other layers, but each zone has its own simple objects, in which case, what are the simple objects in psychoanalysis? So that is the argument of the criticism of depth. You don't go to the most elemental level that you can go, even conceptually, live apart empirically. Empirically, we are far off from that, but even conceptually or metaphorically in theorization, you don't go to the simple objects in psychoanalysis. You stop at a very macro level of the core process. You don't deconstruct and further do elementary analysis of the core process. So this is the criticism of depth. So if you put the two criticism together, it is like this. In terms of the width, right, the framework is narrow. In terms of depth, again, you stop at a much macro level. You don't go deeper. So these are the two criticisms, and what the heat model does is to take care of these two criticisms. So the heat model is not only a psychological model, it also includes philosophy. So because it's a philosophico-psycho model, it starts from the source of creation, goes to the end state of the creation. So it goes from the start state to the end state. So the width problem is taken care of, and starts from the highest layer of consciousness down to the most elemental, at least the psychoanalytic elementals. That takes care of the depth criticism of psychoanalysis. So what the heat model does is it philosophically embraces the full width, and it goes deeper down to the psychological elementals. So this is how the criticism is, and this is how heat model addresses it to create a complete model of analysis and healing.
So, as you said, complete. Heat goes deeper and wider to the aspects, but till now, nobody has created any structure. So what is the need? Why do that at all to that level of elemental and fundamentals?
First is to have perfect knowledge. Nobody can say that stopping at the level of the core process in psychoanalysis is complete knowledge. Everybody acknowledges that we have miles to go, and we are very amorphous, unstructured, and groping for completeness, so to say. So first is the motivation of perfect knowledge, that we always want more comprehensive theories, finer theories, more exact theories, and better theories. Second is to fine-tune healing. So first motivation is the knowledge motivation, which is largely conceptual. Second motivation is the healing motivation, that we want a finer healing. Now, finer healing can happen in two ways. If we know something in an elemental sense, we know at what stage to intervene. Should you intervene at the very root, or should you intervene at a macro level? For example, if you take one example from the Indian spirituality, let us say you complain about migraine. One way to deal with it is to go through Ayurveda and apply medications on the head and so on. Second way to deal with it is to go into the root emotions, into anger. And the third deepest way is to go at the level of Mahapanch Mahabhut, the elementals. So in Indian spirituality, there was a long-standing tradition of analyzing something down to the elementals, and also creating processes for cleaning and refinement at the level of elementals, which is called Bhuta Shuddhi, right? Purification of the elementals. Now, at what level do you want to go? Somebody says, I have migraine. Would you go to the elemental level? Would you go would you intervene at the psychological level, or even more macro Ayurvedic level? It depends upon what will work best for the person. Now, this knowledge we can have if we have a complete analysis and we have used it a couple of times. So the second motivation is of healing. The third motivation is of creating a holistic healing model. That this allows us to create a holistic healing model. For example, once you talk about the 5 bodies, you can create a holistic healing plan to heal at every body, every level. And lastly, if you put all of this together, you end with a complete model of analysis and healing. So these are the motivations why to go for such a model.
So when we started with the discussion, we took up an example of split. So if we see this heat model, which is more elaborative, which works to the most fundamental aspects of the existence, how do we then treat that split differently in heat?
We have seen how split would be treated in classical psychoanalysis. How it would be understood, how it would be recognized, and how it would be healed in therapy. Some interventions we saw a couple of minutes ago. Now let us look at how heat would analyze the same thing deeper and how it would look at healing it. So let me share a table on this. Is the table visible? Is the slide visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
So the heat pathogenesis is this 8-step process. Now, if you look at step 1, 2, 3, this is what we do in classical psychoanalysis all the time. So 1, 2, 3 is the same. From 4, you add something. You go deeper and you go wider. So first you do the diagnosis. You have the case history. On the basis of case history, you do the diagnosis. And diagnosis is delusion of persecution, right? Then you look at the story of the symptoms. What does the story tell you? Okay, delusion of persecution is happening in what way? Each person feels the delusion of persecution in a unique way. Somebody will feel that some inane objects are going to come and hurt him. Somebody will say, every evening I see somebody getting down from a chariot and coming for me. Somebody else will say, if I go there, I fear I will be attacked. So all of them will have delusion of persecution, but the specifics will be different. So everyone will have a story of their own. So we, after making the diagnosis of delusion of persecution, we get the story of the symptoms. And then we do the holistic school analysis. does it look like a Freudian explanation will work or Kleinian explanation will work? What will work? We do analysis from all the schools and we arrive at one core process. Okay, looking at the case history, looking at the complaint, this looks like the core process at work in the unconscious mind. Okay? So this is what we always do in psychoanalysis. Now let us look at what we do extra in heat. How would heat treat this delusion of persecution and the split open problem? So we have come till this, that the delusion of persecution is because of the split open. This is very clear. So now heat goes deeper into this. And the first it does is the width of it. That why has this thing happened? So it goes into what is called general causation analysis, which goes into, is it just the laws of science at work? Is it the free will of the individual? Is it the free will of the parents? Is it the karmic thing at work? Is it something from society at work? So you go into the width of it. Right? And that gives a broad general philosophical spiritual idea about it, but it's still not elemental. You are just addressing the width problem. Right? And getting a larger picture of why it should happen. Now the deeper part starts with this. We look at the core process, that the core process is the split open. And what do we have with us? Do we have the split open which the person has experienced recently or something which happened in past? Let us say the person says, yesterday I went to the office and while I was standing at the bus stand, I saw a person in a black dress and I thought he is going to kill me. I was so terrified, I ran back home. Now he is talking about a split open and projection of a recent time. Or he can say, yesterday I was passing through this road and I saw a tree which I used to see in my childhood, and I remembered an incident that while I was passing through this tree, I saw somebody coming to beat me and he had a gun in his hand. And while I was passing through this, I remembered that and I was so afraid. I almost felt as though I was seeing it again and I ran back. Now he is recollecting something from a distant past. So we look at the core process. We look at whether the core process is of recent origin or something of past. And then what we do is we start, the first thing that we do about the core process is it recent or is it past? And then we ask the person how the recent thing has happened, in the past how it has happened, and learn something about the core process. And then we go in the general analysis. So first thing we do is, why has the core process happened? Like, if the mother was not available and the person felt that the good breast is not available, so I will attack the good breast. And what is the split open process? That the good breast is not available. The child becomes angry, attacks the breast in fantasy. The breast does not appear. And then the child is afraid that now the breast will attack back. And therefore, the fear of delusion of persecution and the anxiety, the paranoid anxiety of death and pain, because of the attack of the bad breast, which you had attacked first. Now, if you look at that process, you go deeper into the process. Like, if you look at the process, what is the process? Step 1, good breast is absent. Step 2, bad breast is present. Step 3, the child attacks the bad breast, right? So that it goes away and the good breast reappears. Step 4, the child intensifies the attacks, becomes very sadistic. Step 5, child has spent all the aggression, nothing has happened. Step 6, the child now feels powerless and helpless. Step 7, the child now believes that the bad breast will attack him even more torturously than he attacked the bad breast. Now, if you look at the core process, there are two key turning points in the core process. The first turning point, I can't see you.
Is it the video has stopped?
Yeah, I'm seeing your DP.
Oh, I think some network issues are there.
कोई
Let
बात
me check.
कोई बात नहीं.
I'll
So,
check. But I can hear it, sir.
should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, if you analyze the core process of how the split has remained open and how the fear of attack is there. If you look at this fear of attack process, the fear of attack process, it has two important points. Point 1, the child attacks the bad breast with all the aggression and sadism. And point 2,
Right.
it feels powerless and it makes an assessment that the bad breast will attack it back. Now, these two are the core points. If the child had never attacked the bad breast, there was no question of bad breast attacking him. Or if the child was very positive, let us say, and the child would feel that even if I have attacked the bad breast is so good, it will not attack me. Or I am so protected, it will not attack me. If it has that positivity, attack would not be anticipated. So if you go deeper into this process of the split open and the attack coming on the person, there are two important points in the process. The aggression shown towards the bad breast and assessment after powerlessness that the bad breast will attack me with huge intensity. Let us say you have an assessment that I am powerless, I have attacked the bad breast, now the bad breast will attack me, but it will not be so difficult an attack. Again, you don't have a delusion, you don't have that kind of paranoid anxiety. So there are two key turning points. Point 1 is aggression and sadism shown on the bad breast. And point 2, the assessment, the evaluation that now it will attack me with even more ferocity. So what we have done, we have gone a step deeper into the core process. Okay, if these two things had not happened, delusion of persecution would not have happened. Right? Now, in that context, we start looking at why have these two things happened in the core process. So we coin a term called the core event, that in the core process, what are the core events? The core events are the first event, the good breast is absent. That is not the core event. Second step, bad breast is present, not the core event. Third step, the child attacks the bad breast. It's a core event. The good breast still does not appear, not a core event. The child feels powerless and helpless, not a core event. The child now evaluates that the bad breast will attack it back in a torturous way. That's a core event. So in the core process, when we go into deeper analysis, we find the core process can be divided into many events, and two of them here are core events. Right? Now, for the core event, which is the more important of the two, I would say the second one is the more important of the two.
True.
Right? So we go into analysis of the core event, that why has the child assessed that the bad breast will attack me with even more ferocity than I attacked it. In this evaluation, right? How is the constitution of the child at work? How is the environment at work? What is the capacity of the child to bear emotions? How the defenses are playing out? And then if something else comes up, I call it open space. So this is the core event analysis in general. Right? Because if there are two children, maybe the same event happens, but the core events are different and therefore the outcome is different. Right? So this is the first level of in-depth analysis of heat, which is deconstructing the core process into elemental events and finding out the core events and doing a general analysis of the most important core event. Now,
just for an add-on in this, when you're exploring, I have encountered a patient who has the schizotypal disorder, where there is this delusion of persecution has just evolved recently, and somehow very the example we are using it is very much applicable because they are twin brothers. One of the brother is absolutely fine, and this fellow has been facing these issues from last 10 to 12 years. So in his case, the constitution environment has there, but the core event is there is a fear of, it's not just the bad breast, because now he's doubting all the therapists, psychiatrists, doctors, spirituality, that nothing is going to help me. So the fear is not only, now the fear is so expansive that it has covered the good breast also. And there's a lot of disappointment and depression with that. So how this, yes, sir?
Yeah, please go on. Please go on.
So how would we explain this part where the core event has shifted? It's not no more that I attack on the good breast. Now bad breast is going to punish me. Rather it is, I have attacked the bad breast. Bad breast is going to, now even the good breast has made allies with the bad breast, and both of them are going to attack. So the core event has changed in this particular case.
It's an interesting thing. We have less than a minute to go. Let us continue with this in the second part.
Definitely.
With the example that you have brought about. It's an interesting example.
Right.